pop those drinks. It's time for Sports Around the Bar. Welcome into Sports Around the Bar, your weekly sports talk show. As always, I am Jake, your bartender, and you all know the great and powerful Drew. I was going to change it up, and I messed it up, man. This is why I don't do new things.
What's going on, Ty? Glad you could join us, man.
Absolutely, guys. Today we've got a lot of NFL news to talk about. We've got, some trades. We've got some free agency. We've got some D coordinators that decide they don't want to be D coordinators for a certain team in the AFC East. And we've also got Sweet 16 to talk about here, Drew. Is there anything you're looking forward to most?
Man, always NFL. Always. I mean, that's what I love. I can't help it.
I'm right there with you, man. I love talking NFL. Why don't we get started with that? We'll start off the field and start with Greg Schiano stepping down from the New England Patriots, man. This came out of nowhere. I mean, they didn't even make a big announcement on signing him, and then 2 months later, he's gone. And it's supposedly, I want to spend more time with my faith and family, I think it was, in quotations there. Are you believing any of that?
I want to know what he got caught doing by his wife.
You think he did
or
something?
Family.
I need to spend more time with him. Obviously, I can't be alone on Sunday.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely he's away from his family a lot more than just Sunday, but it just seems a little questionable. It really does. I mean, there's speculation that him and Belichick didn't get along, didn't see eye to eye, but they're supposed to be, best of friends. So who knows? To be honest, the way he put it, it kind of makes it seem like he was either battling some temptations or he got caught doing something he shouldn't have.
Well, it's either that or he just couldn't stand Bill Belichick, and I believe that's probably the more likely case rather than him going out of his way and doing anything. I know he's got a lot of question marks on his character and his background going all the way back to Penn State. Did he know about Jerry Sandusky? Did he not? What did he know? When did he know it? I don't think that was any of this. I think this was he signed on with the Patriots because he's like, this is a pretty easy way to go win a Super Bowl, and then he had to spend 2 months hanging around Bill Belichick and decided it wasn't for him. I really do believe he probably just wore him down.
It's a possibility. I mean, everyone knows he's a tough character to be around. He expects a lot and expects perfection.
Absolutely, and you could argue it worked, but again, the Patriot way, not for everybody. I think that's probably more likely what happened rather than, him going out and doing anything extramarital or anything. I don't know. Would you give up this big-paying job just because you got caught? Usually that just leads to divorce,
I'm just saying, who says that, though? Who said it was something marital? I mean, I'm just saying it seemed like something happened. Because he did not just say family, he said faith and family. So some kind of temptation was battling with him. If he gave in the temptation, that might be it. But, I mean, it's
Brady tried kissing him on the mouth. He's like, I got to get out of here.
Or
maybe it's Robert Kraft. I don't know. Too many jokes for that. Anyway.
Way too many.
Going back to this, just one more quick thing on this story in case unless you guys have something you want to say about it. I don't think this necessarily hurts the Patriots. I mean, Bill Belichick is a defensive coach. That's where he makes his living, is on the defensive side of the ball. So regardless of whoever they bring in next, it's going to be Belichick's system that's still kind of implemented. They may have the keys to the defense, but Belichick ultimately has veto power, I'd say. And really, I don't think they're in any kind of danger of being that worse than they were last year, right?
No, I don't think so. And I think it's very much possible if they can't find someone he completely trusts, he'll be calling plays for this year.
Very possibly. Very possibly. All right, man, let's move on. Let's talk Cowboys next because obviously they just traded for defensive end Robert Quinn from the Dolphins. Do you want to talk Cowboys first or do you want to talk Dolphins end of this trade?
Either or. Jeremy, man, I'm glad you could join us. Hope you didn't miss too much, man. We just got done talking about Greg Schiano stepping down as defensive coordinator. I don't know if you had any comments about it, but feel free to
absolutely.
Comment away.
And we see the UK banner, man. We're going to be talking about them coming up towards the back end of the show. We'll be talking Sweet 16, and obviously they got a game tonight, so we'll talk about that a little bit too.
Let's go ahead and jump into the Cowboys side of it. So they went out and grabbed themselves a veteran pass rusher, someone that is going to help their defensive line get after the quarterback. Maybe it's because of DeMarcus Lawrence not saying he's going to be there until he gets a long-term deal. He already turned down a deal supposedly by rumors. I mean, does someone like him bringing in, does it fix a kind of a fix now scenario?
I want to sit there and say it's one of those things that maybe it does give you a little bit of insulation, but you cannot afford to lose DeMarcus Lawrence here. You cannot give up a guy like that. It doesn't matter what he wants. Just pay him. Find the money. Give it to him because when you have a young pass rusher like that, to me, it's still the second most important position on the field behind quarterback. DeMarcus Lawrence is one of the best. There's no reason you should be giving up a 24, 25, 26-year-old guy in Lawrence, even with Robert Quinn coming in. I do like this because when they get this deal done with DeMarcus Lawrence, you're going to have another rotational guy. You're going to have a guy that can play opposite of him that can make an impact. And I really do believe Robert Quinn still has enough football left in the tank where he's going to help this Cowboys defense out, which is, to me, the best part of this team. Yeah. Everyone wants to talk about Amari Cooper coming in. They want to talk about Dak Prescott, and is he going to be good? Is he going to be good enough next year to win a Super Bowl? And Zeke Elliott and everything. This last year was about the defense. They were the most consistent part of this team. They were the most dominant part of this team. This is still a defensive football team, and bringing on extra defensive players always helps. Almost always helps.
Jeremy, I hope you enjoy that game, but he's also saying give him the money. But the question is then if you give him all the money, how are you going to sign Dak? How are you going to sign Cooper? How are you going to sign...
Well, they did sign Amari Cooper, so that at least is water under the bridge. They re-signed him with the trade. But I get what you're saying. They have a lot of contracts coming up. They got a lot of money tied up in that offensive line, which is now starting to not be as good as they were when it came time to pay those guys.
You have plenty more contracts coming up.
Very true.
If you sit there and give him top dollar, can you afford to sign everybody else?
You need to, because that's where it starts. I mean, if you look at it, pass rusher is the second most important position because they're the guy that stops the passing game. Usually it's not the defensive tackles, unless your name's Aaron Donald. Usually it's the guy from the edge that's rushing the passer that's going to slow down opponents' passing offenses. And this is 2019.
No.
Cornerbacks can't do anything to stop the game. I mean, they can make a couple interceptions. They can make a couple splash plays. But for the most part, it comes down to, is your pass rush disrupting that quarterback, moving him off his mound, and not letting him sit back there and make a smart throw?
If I remember correctly, the deal to be rumored that he denied was 6 years and $120 million. That puts him at $20 million a year. I know that he wants to be closer to where Aaron Donald is, which is 22.5. But to be honest with you, the way to fix some of that scenario is guaranteed money. Jerry Jones, reach into your deep pockets and pay the man a large sum of this contract, and you might be able to get some of this.
He already came out and said he'd spend $1 billion to win a Super Bowl. He would go out and spend $1 billion if he could, but football has that hard salary cap, so they don't really get the choice. Now, Will kind of agrees with us here. He says it's all about Zeke and the defense. I'll agree with you, and the biggest key on that defense is DeMarcus Lawrence. Last year was the prove-it deal, and he signed up for it. A lot of guys could have held out, like guys like Frank Clark in Seattle this year said, I don't want a prove-it deal. I played well last year. It's time for you to pay me. He played well now consecutively for 2 years, and it's time for him to get rewarded for that, I think.
Yeah, and don't forget at all that I'm sitting there saying he deserves the money. I mean, if he's not going to get it, some team will pay this guy. But if you want him there, it's time to start upping the ante. If you don't want to do more than $20 million, guarantee 90% of it.
I agree. You can get creative with the contract.
I mean, that's how you get these guys to sign this contract, because even when you see, the 6-year, $100 million, it's not always $100 million when the end of all said and done, unless it's guaranteed.
Looking at you, Landon Collins. I know you signed that $90 million contract, but if you don't make it 6 years, if you only make it 2, you're not getting anywhere near that.
Exactly.
Going on to the other side of this, I like this trade for the Cowboys. You're giving up a 2026 round pick, so essentially nothing. I mean, realistically, it's a roll of the dice 2 years down the road. I think the Cowboys won this trade hands down because they're getting a guy in Robert Quinn that can rush the passer. He can make some impact plays. He's not a number 1 anymore, but he can be a quality number 2/number 3, and that's what the Cowboys need next to DeMarcus Lawrence. Let's flip the script, though. Let's talk about the Dolphins. Are they imploding? Are they done?
Real quick, Brian, I'm glad you got your normal account back. Glad you could join us. You're checking out that Michigan State and LSU game. No, they've already admitted it. I mean, they admitted it without even saying it. It's full rebuild mode.
Yeah, when you sign like Ryan Fitzpatrick, you trade Tannehill away, you're kind of punting on this season, I'd sit there and say. And it's too bad for a guy like Brian Flores, who you're leaving an organization like the Patriots, and you're getting one of the biggest and hardest rebuild projects in the entire NFL by moving down to Miami. At least the weather's nice. I mean, at least he's got that going.
Except
for
you
him.
got to face your former team and employer twice a year. It's a little rough, man. It's tough. I mean, is this the right move? I mean, you're getting rid of a pass rusher that's 29, 30 years old going into this season. I mean, he's obviously not your long-term answer in that position. Do you get something out of it? The question is a 6th-round pick really worth it?
No, I don't think so. This to me is the Dolphins saying we're not going to be good next year, so why pay all this money to a guy who, whether he's good or not, doesn't help us any? So, yeah, I mean, they basically sent him out to pasture for nothing. They took a 6th-round pick just to get his money off the books. I'm not really crazy about this. I wasn't crazy about them trading Tannehill from a Dolphins perspective. I'm not crazy about them trading Quinn away as well. The Dolphins are really just grenading this season. I think they're going to sit there and say, look, we're pick 13 coming up here. We're not going to have the capital to move up and go get one of these quarterbacks this year like Kyler Murray, who might go number 1 overall anyway. Let's just punt this year and go get the best quarterback next year. And I know teams don't normally sit there and tank in the NFL, but they have to be tanking. Like, there's no... We were having them winning 2 games in our preseason selections last year. Now it's like they've gotten worse.
Yeah.
So I know they won 7 last year with Tannehill and I think 1 or 2 with Osweiler. They're not getting anywhere close to that this year.
Yep. It's you're gonna find people that are gonna play for your organization because they want to play somewhere. Someone like Ryan Fitzpatrick, he's gonna go out there and give you his all every single game if he can stay healthy.
Well, he's shown he can do it with weapons. When he was in Tampa Bay and they had all those receiving weapons, it worked. I mean, he won some games. But then the bad Ryan Tannehill, the Hyde and the Jekyll and Hyde kind of dichotomy that he has, showed up too, and he had bad games on top of it. If you take the talent off the field and you put him out there, you're not going to get those games where he's throwing 400 yards. I just don't see it. He needs guys that are going to make him better, like he had with the Jets when they had Brandon Marshall and Eric Decker, both still young enough to make an impact. You don't have any of those guys in Miami. I mean, is it going to be Devontae Parker finally? We've been waiting for Devontae Parker to arrive for like 5 years now.
No, you're right. Will, I'm glad you could join us, man. Dude, it's going to be rough to be a Miami Dolphins fan. That's just the best way to put it. They got a lot of fixing to do, and they're obviously throwing this season underneath the bus.
And Jeremy says the Dolphins are rebuilding. He guesses they're in the teardown part of that rebuild, though. I mean, I don't see much building going on. It's pretty much just light it all on fire and sell what you can't burn. Nate, good to see you too, man. Glad to see you in here as well. And Ty says they're definitely tanking. I'll agree. I think I'm not a big NFL tanking guy because we've seen what happens when teams like Arizona don't have a lot of talent. You can only go there are times where you can go 1 year and get fired. Do you see Brian Flores potentially on a hot seat if the Dolphins don't win a game this year?
No. Well, they don't win a game.
Should be, or
if they don't
going
win
to
a game,
yeah.
It's a possibility, yeah. I really hate 1 year and done for coaches. I think that's the worst scenario you could show your organization, your players, and your fan base is, oops, we made a mistake. We're only going to give this guy 1 year.
Absolutely. Sharif, good to see you too, man. Glad you could make it, and glad to see Houston representing here too. Look, if I'm Robert Flores, I'm sitting there looking around like, man, what the heck did I just sign up for? Because I'm looking around, they've already traded my quarterback, who, whether you believe in him or not, is a bridge guy in Tannehill that can win you a few games. He showed that this year with Adam Gase.
Yeah.
That even though they didn't have the best talent in the world, he could win a few games and make you look somewhat presentable. And they're trading all your defensive talent away too. So in a minute here, the Dolphins are going to be pretty empty as a team. And my question is going to be, do they try to address it this year in the draft, or do they just kick the can down the road and say, 2019 isn't our year? Now, I believe it was Kevin it was Frank, I'm sorry, that brought up a great point in our messages before, and he wanted to know, are the Dolphins just trying to outweigh Tom Brady here? Have they just finally sat there, thrown up their hands and say, we can't win when this guy's in the league, so we'll just wait him out?
Well, I don't know. Sharif just said Miami has always been a thorn in New England's side every year, which I got to agree with.
And of the three, they've been the most competitive. I mean, I know the Jets had a couple game spell when Rex Ryan was there.
Right.
The Bills have had, once in a while, they'll steal one from the Patriots. But if you look at that team that's going to win one of these games every year, more than not, it's Miami.
Yeah. I mean, you're 100% right, man. It's always been in Miami, too.
Are they punting, though, Drew? Are they sitting there saying, look, we can't beat Tom Brady, we need to just wait him out?
I was just about to ask, does every move they're making the right move to stop New England, at least give them one?
No.
This
2026 round pick doesn't beat Tom Brady anytime soon. Let me just tell you that.
It could be the new Tom Brady.
It could be Antonio Brown. He was a 6th round pick, too.
It could be Tom Brady.
It could be. I mean, I hope they take a quarterback higher than that, but you never know. Moving forward, I think the Dolphins are totally just burning it all down. I got nothing else to say. I can't wait to talk about them in our show going forward because I don't know how we're going to pick more than 2 games for them. They'll probably wind up winning 6 or 7 again, though, because we're not picking them.
Probably. Real quick, Jeremy did say that he thinks Fitzmagic will beat New England this year.
With who? And is he going to be the quarterback at that point?
Fitzmagic, that's with who?
And Devontae Parker?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't see it. I really don't. I mean,
Drake?
I like Ryan Fitzpatrick, but again, if you look at where he's had his success, it's been on teams that have been able to put some good receivers on the board and let him open things up. And he'll still make some mistakes. He'll still throw some games away because he throws 4 interceptions. But there are some games where he only throws 2 and then throws 4 touchdowns or 5 touchdowns, and it works out.
So would you take him on the Titans?
Right now, with Tannehill and Mariota, no.
Without Tannehill?
Without Tannehill, yes. Hands down. I'd take him over Blaine Gabbert. If you wanted to roll the dice on one of these guys winning your game, would you take him or would you take Blaine Gabbert? Fitzpatrick. Yeah. Sorry about that, Tampa Bay. I know that's your problem now. Will, I'm sure, is heartbroken about Gabbert moving on south to Tampa as well. But look, when it comes to backup quarterbacks, I think Ryan Fitzpatrick's a good one. When it comes to starting quarterbacks,
you can do better.
You can do better, for sure.
Yeah.
He's not winning a Super Bowl.
No.
And I think it's fair to say the Dolphins aren't winning one either. Let's talk about the Raiders, though, Drew. Let's move on. The Raiders active in free agency, not only in the first wave, But also in the second wave here, they've signed Brandon Marshall, linebacker from Denver, stealing a defensive linebacker from a division rival. Do you like this move?
I probably would have liked this move if Denver would have released him like a few years back. To be honest with you, he was an up-and-coming linebacker in Denver that I thought was going to be another great linebacker in the Broncos court. I'm sitting there going, man, this guy's just going to be good. And then he kind of fell off. And, what does he have left in the tank? Now, do I think it's a great move for the Raiders? Absolutely. You're getting a veteran linebacker that's used to everything that the NFL could throw at him, and he's consistent in what he is.
Let me go back to the comments here really quick. Sharif says Fitzmagic will be a huge waiver wire pickup in fantasy football. In years past, yes, I agree with that. This year, I'd stay away from him. I'm not saying he won't get scooped up by some people, but man, I think the magic is going to run out when there's no one there to catch the ball. I really do think they're going to be one of the worst offensive teams in football. I mean, even Frank Gore's gone. Now what do they got?
Got Drake.
Yeah, okay. Jeremy also says Mark Sanchez before Blaine Gabbert. Let's not do anything crazy here. I don't know if you saw Mark Sanchez play, but obviously no one was enthused with him this year. He's good enough to be a third quarterback.
I'm sure.
But the problem is, I think there's about 65 guys that are better than Mark Sanchez in the NFL. Blaine Gabbert being one of them.
I'm sure he's got a couple more butt fumbles in him too.
Let's not forget, Blaine Gabbert was the guy that beat out Colin Kaepernick that started all the kneeling controversy and everything. It wasn't until Kaepernick was sitting on the bench that all this came out. Blaine Gabbert had enough skill to beat him out.
Yeah.
You could say they were tanking too. I'm not going to sit there and say they were winning the Super Bowl that year. But he did well there. He won some games in Arizona. I get it. He didn't look good for the Titans, but a lot of quarterbacks don't look good for the Titans. So, I mean, that just might be an organizational problem. Going back to Brandon Marshall, though, I really do like the signing. I like bringing on a 29-year-old vet when you're talking about paying him a contract that's somewhere around that $3 to $4 million mark. It's only for 1 year, so if it doesn't work out, you punt him. When you look at the defense they've had and the way they've played, they need a guy that can rack up some tackles, and I think Brandon Marshall is that guy. He's that guy that can be the leader on a defense that needs veteran leadership right now. You don't need another young guy in back there, although a young, talented guy would help. But you need that veteran who can show everybody the way. Brandon Marshall's that guy. He's been in big games. He's been to the Super Bowl. I say no. There's no problem for me bringing him in.
And he still has a lot of ball left in him. At 29 years old, he can still ball. So that's important because bringing in Derek Johnson, who lost a step last year, obviously that did not work out. This is not that same kind of character. I mean, this guy still has a lot left.
You're bringing in about 6 or 7 years off of Derek Johnson, so versus Brandon Marshall. And another thing I like about this, or I would have liked better, is if Oakland had signed him to a 3-year, $12 million contract and guaranteed a bunch of money on the front end, and then left a bunch of it hanging off the back. So that way, if you want to keep Brandon Marshall around, you don't have to pay him next year if he does have a bounce-back year. That's what I would like to see, personally. Yeah. But 1 year, $4 million, it's still a good deal for a veteran middle linebacker.
Tyler said if Mack was still there, with the free agency pickups, he may be worried about this season as far as the Raiders being good.
Well, you might be saying that again because this draft is going to come around and they've got 3 picks up there. I know they only got like pick 20. Was it 5 or 27? I think it was 25 for the Bears. So, I mean, they're going to turn this draft into a lot of young, talented guys. There might be a point in time where 2 years down the road we look back on this and we say trading Khalil Mack was the right move. I just don't know if I see it. I really don't, Drew. I still think you'd be better off with that 27-year-old best, arguably outside linebacker / D-end edge rusher in the NFL when it comes from a pure pass rushing perspective.
Sharif said, look at Jake pumping up his backup.
Well, I mean, Tannehill is much higher than Gabbert. Let me say that. And, I mean, Gabbert did win some games. He beat Houston this year. You remember that, Sharif? I know you're a Texans fan. Blaine Gabbert, I wouldn't say it was all on him, but he managed to grab a win with the Titans in Week 2, I believe it was, against the Houston Texans in a game that, let's face it, they probably should have lost. I think it was like 13-10 or something ugly like that. But I'm just saying, when it comes to quarterbacks, I'd take Blaine Gabbert over Mark Sanchez, but there's a lot of guys I'd take over Mark Sanchez first.
Thomas says, is this an NFL talk show or all sports? Man, you've been around. You know we talk a lot of NFL, but we literally cover everything we possibly can. You guys can always let us know what you want to talk about, but it seems like, for the most part, NFL is what.
If you want to talk football, we'll talk football. I mean, we are going to move on. We're going to talk Sweet 16 a little bit later tonight, too. I'm not sure if you want us to go into opening day statistics, but let me tell you, there's 161 other days in baseball that matter just as much as opening day does, so we won't dwell on that too much. There are other things to talk about in sports, again, and we will get to that towards the end of the show, Thomas, but you can't neglect the NFL when you got moves like this happening. Another move like that, Drew, Isaiah Crowell going to the Raiders as well. How do you feel about them bringing on a 26-year-old running back instead of 32-year-old Marshawn Lynch?
I like this move, but you're going to need to bring someone else in. I mean, he's. I thought he could be.
Can him and Doug Martin kind of play together?
Do you think Doug Martin still has it?
No.
Okay.
But that's what I was asking you. I was seeing if you were going to disagree with me.
So Crowell needs somebody in there that can also do it, because I thought Crowell coming out of Cleveland, not carrying the rock all the time, when he went to the Jets, I'm like, okay, this guy can carry the load. This guy can carry the ball 25 times in a game if he needs to be doing it. And when he goes to the Jets, they had no confidence at all. So now I kind of wonder what he's going to do in Oakland, and they need to bring that running back in.
I totally agree with you. Now, Chris also says, going back to Brandon Marshall, he says he's still a beast. I agree with you. I think I'm not going to say he's a beast, but I think he can be a quality player. He's one of those guys that your defense is better because he's on the roster. And I think he can actually help Oakland in the run defense category. Look for them to bring on a D tackle to play in front of him. Look for them to bring on an edge rusher, maybe even two, to try to shore up that defensive line. But if you get a good defensive line going and a guy like that calling the defense behind him, you could do certainly much worse than Brandon Marshall.
Oh, absolutely.
Going back to the Isaiah Crowell thing, I think you're absolutely right, man. They need to bring in a second running back. I think he could be a great number 2. I think he'd be an okay number 1 if you have that spell back who's quick behind him. If you could get somebody like, not necessarily Bly Powell from the Jets, but if you can find somebody like a Duke Johnson that can play just a totally different style than Crowell and you put him in behind him, I like this signing a lot because I think Oakland needs some versatility at running back. They had Doug Martin, who's by and large a power back at this point in his career. Marshawn Lynch, a power back that's over the hill. On top of it, they need to bring in a game where they can kind of mix things up on defenses. Right now, they don't have that. I'd like to see them bring in a scat back in this draft or somebody else. Could it be Josh Jacobs in the first round from Alabama?
It's a possibility.
It shouldn't be, but it could be, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely...
And I think Josh Jacobs would be a good second-round running back. I think he'd be a great third-round running back. I just don't know if he's got the talent, especially for his few snaps as he got at Alabama. I would not be spending a first-round pick on this guy. But if they did bring him in, I think he could fit well with Crowell.
I think there's a lot of talent in this draft in general. I think it's there's so much everywhere in every position. You could find somewhere way late in the draft. I mean, like Iowa State's running back Montgomery. I mean, that guy seems to be just a talent out of doing anything you can in a game. I mean, it's talent everywhere. Bryce Love as well from Stanford. I just think about players that are not being listed at a number 1 round talent that I still think could play in the NFL.
Absolutely.
That you can find somewhere later on. They just need to pick up somebody.
Now, Chris also says Oakland trading Mack was one of the worst moves they could have done. At the time, I would have agreed with you. Right now, with the way they've brought on a lot of these free agents, with the way they've traded for Antonio Brown and they've traded for some other guys and signed guys like Tyrell Williams, I want to sit there and say wait and see, because if they have a great draft and they bring on 2 or 3 star players in this draft, we're going to be talking about how Oakland is one of the fastest rebuilds in NFL history. I mean, before that they had Amari Cooper and Khalil Mack that were basically the highlights of their team. If they can go refresh this team right away, we're going to be talking about how Oakland turned things around overnight. And you don't see that all the time in the NFL. It's still a hard thing to do.
I'm going to put some of these comments together because Sharif said Crowell can catch out of the backfield. He's a decent, and he's about a 15 to 20 touch game guy. So if it's someone like Ty said, if you can bring in someone like LeGarrette Blount, would that be a terrible bring-in? So you got Crowell, who's kind of your...
At this point, yeah. You get LeGarrette Blount. He's going to be, in my opinion, I don't like LeGarrette Blount going in there because he's at the same point I think Marshawn Lynch is, where he's a power back that's losing a step. He's not quite as fast anymore. If this was LeGarrette Blount at 29 years old, I'd say that'd be a still decent matchup. But we've already tried it with these old backs in Oakland. I want to see another young receiving back who's better than Jalen Richard, who, yes, I know is on there. He's a receiving guy. I wouldn't bet on Jalen Richard being the number 2. I like Jalen Richard, but I don't think he's good enough. If you brought on another guy, I think that's great.
Hey, guys, if you can, all make fun of Devin Rogers. As much as you possibly can, just make fun of that guy. Make him feel unwelcome here at Sports Around the Bar, just as much as you possibly can.
Now, Seth also has MSU as the 2019 double NCAA champions. Only time will tell on that. I'm still picking Duke. Or actually, I think I had UNC beating Duke in one of my brackets. So
yeah, you did. Yeah.
I'm going to go with some of the ACC guys. So maybe. I hope so. It'd be fun to watch. You never know. Now, going on to some of these, Ty asked, is Blount still available? I believe he's out there, but my guess is he's one of those guys that's going to be just a casualty of a small market. I mean, he's 33 at this point. I know he's got Super Bowl rings, but obviously Detroit couldn't really get much out of him last year. For a team that was desperate for any kind of running back, I don't think LeGarrette Blount has much of an NFL career left.
Yeah, I'm kind of there with you. I think it's a stretch. I mean, I think you need someone young. Running backs, is with Adrian Peterson doing the incredible things he's doing at his age, you don't expect that. I mean, it's definitely a young man's game at that position.
Sharif also asked, what did Devin do? He's guilty of the crime of no one liking him. So please, do us a favor and make fun of that guy. Going back to this, Oakland, I think, they're the winners of free agency, right? Right now, if you had to pick a team that won free agency or won the offseason, I know we haven't seen the draft yet, but Oakland looks like that team. They've spent big money to bring in Antonio Brown and traded guys away. They've paid guys like Tyrell Williams, who can be a good number 2 receiver. I mean, they've traded away big, expensive guys like Osemele to the Jets. Do you really think? I mean, that you have to give them the crown, right? Cleveland, maybe.
Cleveland, they got the undersigning of Kareem Hunt, that a lot of people are talking about.
Okay,
all right. Get him back.
Co-champions. I mean, when you bring in a guy like Antonio Brown, that's a pretty big move.
Yeah, exactly. But in my opinion, when you look at those two signings compared to the signings that Oakland did, I mean, yeah, you got Tyrone Williams, and yeah, you got Brandon Marshall and Crowell, but can those guys become elite status in the Raiders organization? Because we kind of know what Antonio Brown's going to already do.
Now, Nate also asked what kind of beer we're drinking. This is, what was it, Drew? Remind us. What do you brew in the bathtub upstairs?
Heagling Dingling.
Exactly. Nate, we are drinking Yingle. No, I'm not going to say that. He also says, fuck Devin 2019. Let's get that hashtag rolling out there.
Let's get it going.
Going back to this, Drew, I want to move on because I don't want to dwell on Oakland all day. I want to talk about the Chicago. Because if you haven't heard, they've got a running back on the move to Philadelphia.
I do. I called you.
I know. I couldn't believe it when I saw it. And then when I saw Ryan Pace up there for GM of the year last year, and we're talking about how he robbed the Raiders to get Khalil Mack, and he's been one of the great builders recently in the NFL, and he's had great drafts and everything. And then he trades Jordan Howard for a 2026 round pick. I was like, man, does he come off the list for you? Is he off the GM of the year candidate from last year because he made this move? Yes. Yeah, exactly.
It's a huge question mark. I mean, listen, he's 24 years old. He had 2 good seasons and a 3rd questionable season. Yeah, some of the average yards per carry went down. He wasn't part of the scheme, but do you really get rid of a 24-year-old that has literally proven himself as a starter in the NFL?
A 24-year-old who won't be 25 until the end of next season. So it's not like he's going to be 25 and you could sit there and say, oh, well, we've got a couple of years out of him at running back, so he's got some No. I mean, the dude is just now 24, yeah. So he has all the football in the world ahead of him. You're talking about a guy that has over 3,000 yards on the ground. He has receptions as well. He's dunking in 9-10 touchdowns a year. For a 6th-round pick in 2020. Not even this year. You couldn't even spring for that. I mean, I look at this trade, and I'm like, Chicago must have wanted him gone, and they must have wanted him gone badly. Because we talked about this. Was he becoming an attitude problem? And you were one sitting there saying, where's the attitude at? I'm like, it's got to be there. It has to be.
I mean, I'm sure that he was like, man, I want the rock. I want to be involved. Get me involved. And when Matt Nagy was pretty much no, I'm sure it did. I'm sure he was frustrated. I'm sure he had a huge issue, but there was never any kind of reports out there going, he's a locker room issue. He's an issue that no team in the NFL wants. I mean, as far as we know about this guy, he's a running back that anyone in need for a running back should want this guy on their team.
I would have traded Derrick Henry for him. And I like Derrick Henry, but I would have moved Derrick Henry out to bring Jordan Howard.
I would have gave him a 4th-round pick this year for him.
Exactly. And here, again, when we talk about this trade, and I talk about what Ryan Pace got, if this was a 2020 4th-round pick with the opportunity to move up to the 3rd round if he plays a lot, I would love this deal for Chicago because you're getting rid of a guy that obviously is not in your game plan. Even though he had 250 carries last year for them, he's not apparently in the game plan as a number 1 running back for Chicago.
Right.
With Tyreek Cohen there, obviously they want to go towards a smaller back that can receive the ball, and they want to go to a more passing offense. But to get a 6th-round pick out of a guy that can be a Pro Bowler it's ridiculous to me. I mean, you look at these stats, Drew. I know he's regressed some. He went from 5.2 a carry to 4.1 to 3.7, but he's still scoring 9 touchdowns. He's still getting close to 1,000 yards, at least in his worst year. He had 935 yards in the lowest year. To get a 6th-round pick, not this year, but next? I mean, come on, man. This is I'm not going to say that. This is asinine is what it is. I mean, Chicago got killed. He must have been an attitude problem. That's the only thing I can think of that makes this make sense. Is they're like, it doesn't matter what we get, he's out of town. Right?
I mean, you would think. Sharif, he's saying it's a steal. Steal the free agency at this point, I think is what he's saying, because Howard's still on his final year of his rookie deal, which he's 100% true. But then he also says, F Jordan Howard. He ran out
Kadeem Carey.
Kadeem Carey from Chicago.
Yeah, but he needed running out. I mean, obviously, he also displaced Jeremy Langford, but I don't see anyone shedding tears for Langford either, so I don't know. I mean, you look at the way this guy's played, you look at what John Fox was able to do with Jordan Howard. Maybe it was a scheme thing. I mean, it's kind of the same. It's almost poetic justice, because he did it to Jeremy Langford beforehand, where he had that year where he was really successful. They brought Howard in, and all of a sudden, Jeremy Langford can't play football anymore. It's almost poetic that he had something similar happen to him with Tariq Cohen coming in.
What's going on, Jerry? Glad you could join us. Hey, and Will, what would you want your team, the Bucks, to give up to have a running back like Jordan Howard?
I mean, you talk about Peyton Barber being your starter last year, and you talk about the way Ronald Jones has flopped to this point. I think Tampa Bay bringing on a guy like Jordan Howard would be fantastic. And
absolutely
like Sharif said, he's still on the last year of his rookie deal. They owe him about $2 million coming up here, which helps a team like Philadelphia that before free agency was up against the cap. I think this move is fantastic for them because it's almost a prove-it deal right now. You could hang on to him. You can get rid of him. You can do whatever you want with him, and it costs you almost no money. Yeah. So for a team that still thinks the Super Bowl window is open, like Philadelphia does, and probably still is, I'm not sitting there saying it not, to bring in a great running back like this for nothing, I mean, you got to give it to the Eagles. They won this trade, hands down.
Absolutely.
There's no way I can justify it, even if it winds up being that 2025 it can turn into.
Buck Rogers, we don't need your negativity in our show, okay? So you can see your way out of it, all right? Now, let's talk about what Chicago is now going to do at running back, because Will says Bears got Cohen. So he's also trying to give up McCoy or Cameron Brate again. Man,
you need to hang on to Cameron Brate because your tight end mixture is one of the best in the NFL. So I wouldn't be trying to move on from Cam Brate. I know they have O.J. Howard, but these days, 2 tight ends is a fantastic thing. It's just ask the Patriots for the past 10 years, or past 6 or whatever, from when they had Aaron Hernandez as well. And they've been trying to replace it. They brought in guys like Martellus Bennett to be behind Gronk. They brought in guys like Dwayne Allen from Indianapolis. They're still trying to get multiple tight ends. You have that. I don't know why I'd be trying to trade Cameron Brate.
So let's talk about Chicago and what they're going to do at running back. So they obviously signed Mike Davis to a contract. So does Mike Davis take over that power back move? I mean, he had maybe 1, 2, 3 good games in Seattle, and that's it?
With the way they play, yeah, I think that's probably what it's going to be. And you're going to see Tariq Cohen get too many touches. He's going to slow down towards the end of the year. And with his size, he might get hurt. And then Chicago's going to be looking for a running back next year. What I'd like to see him do is draft another guy. The ideal fit for me is the Kareem Hunt that can run with power and can also play that scat back role where you can send him out there to receive. But I don't know if they're necessarily going to find one of those guys in this draft from day one. I don't know if there is that guy out there.
Thanks, Steven. I appreciate it, man.
I mean, do you think they can draft somebody? Is there somebody on your mind at running back that they can sit there and take and replace a guy like Jordan Howard? I don't see it, because Jordan Howard, for all of his power running back comparisons, is not simply a power back. I mean, the guy could catch the ball.
Jimmy, what's going on, man? Dude, well, like I said earlier in the show, this draft has depth almost in every position, maybe minus, I don't know, quarterback, maybe wide receiver after the first few were taken off the top.
I think there's a lot of depth at wide receiver.
But
yeah.
I'm trying to think what position doesn't have it, because when you look at running back, I still think there's great running backs in rounds 2, 3, and 4.
I agree. And at this price, though, you've got to do better than this. This needs to be a round 2, 3, or 4 pick to justify a guy that's a Pro Bowler, because that's what this is. You just traded a Pro Bowler or a guy that's that caliber.
So they don't have a first round pick. We all know that they don't have a first round pick. So is it their first pick in round 2?
I think they go pick a
running back.
I mean, the defense is pretty much set. They could go with another safety that'll eventually replace Clinton Dix, but for right now, the defense is pretty set. And, I mean, you look at the offensive line's still good. You've got Mitch Trubisky at quarterback. You could go receiver, or you could absolutely go running back here. I have no problem bringing on the best weapon from there on for Chicago. Going forward here, JP also says they got a crusty bagel for Jordan Howard. I don't even know if they got that. I mean, realistically here, I wouldn't call it something you could eat, because that at least has some value. They got like a bar of soap on Halloween.
I'm
I don't
buying you
know.
a crusty bagel so you can eat it on the show.
I will. You know what? I'll feel better for having not traded Jordan Howard away for it. One more time on this. Obviously, if you haven't heard, Chicago traded Jordan Howard away for a song to Philadelphia here. Does this make Philadelphia a Super Bowl contender before we move on?
I think it increases their chances. I mean, obviously, they're a playoff team. They were just there. I think it definitely increases. I mean, what were they missing? A good run game. Now they got as far as they did without it. Now does Jordan Howard become the ideal back for Philadelphia? That's the question.
Jimmy also says the Bears still suck. I'm not so sure, Jimmy. I think when you look at what they did last year, you look at the age of that defense, I'd be concerned about the Bears. I really
Says
would.
a Packers fan.
And that's fine. I understand. You always pretty much have to say that about a division rival you don't like, but there's one team I don't want Aaron Rodgers playing. It's the Bears. I know you remember last year where they sat there and hurt him at halftime. I know he came back and everyone remembers the spectacular thing, but Aaron Rodgers didn't seem really exactly right this season, did he?
Everyone also remembers that terrible after the game interview where he seemed like he was on cloud 9.
And he was. He was juiced. But going back to this really quick here. Again, I think Ryan Pace got robbed here. I think there had to have been something going on behind the scenes with Jordan Howard. He was complaining or something that they said, we just have to get rid of him, and it doesn't matter what we're going to get for him. Props to the Eagles for capitalizing on that, because I think there's about 25 other teams out there, Drew, that probably could have gave this up and been much better for it.
I would have given a higher pick than 6th round next year.
Absolutely. All right, man. Just to prove we don't talk anything but NFL, let's talk NCAA here, because if you haven't noticed...
Where are you, Thomas?
March Madness is going on right now, and we have some big games going on here. Let's start with the games that have already gone down. Let's start with Virginia and Oregon. Were you surprised to see Virginia pull through in this one?
No, not really. But
it was close. It was 4 points.
I was really surprised with the scoring. It was a defensive struggle, and I was really surprised that not one team really got a streak of scoring and put this game a little bit higher and out of the way. It seemed to be real close. The question is now, Virginia going forward, can they stop a scoring powerhouse in Purdue?
Well, it's what we've said about Purdue this whole time, is they're very streaky. When they're on fire, Purdue is absolutely unbeatable. I mean, you saw it in Tennessee.
Right now they're the hottest team, in my opinion.
I think you're right. I really do. Even when you look at teams like Duke that have had a scare. And we've seen guys like Gonzaga pretty much blow everybody out through the tournament. I mean, there are other teams that are playing really well right now, but when you look at a team that just dropped 100 points, and I know they went to overtime, but it was like 85 or something like that before they got there.
Yeah.
Purdue absolutely can score the basketball. And that's all you need sometimes in basketball, is just to have that offensive explosion, and whatever happens on defense happens. You can still outshoot teams. I think Purdue, if they can keep this run up, they can beat anybody. And I think Virginia should absolutely be worried when you put up 53 and the team you're playing against put up 99.
Shay, we're just glad that you bought Kansas City swag, man. You just keep buying that toilet paper and make us all happy with that money.
Jimmy says Aaron Rodgers was hopped up on some downers. Yeah, they gave him some pain medicine. I
There's
guarantee
no doubt
you he was
about it,
floating
yeah.
when he gave that interview. Going back to this game, though, does Oregon win if Bol plays? Because obviously they're playing without their best player. He's announced he's going out for the NBA draft here as well. Do they win this game with him? Because I think it's pretty clear they do. And we talked about it before. We think Virginia is the most susceptible 1 seed still in it. All of them have made it through this point. But if he plays, I think Virginia's out in this round.
Yeah,
I think it's pretty hands down. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard not to say. I mean, like, they lost by 4 points. I mean, he's obviously going to score more than 4 points.
Exactly, and he's probably 4 points above the replacement. I think obviously he's probably a first-round pick. We might see him go in the top 10.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's necessarily as good as one of these kids from Duke or maybe someone like John Morant, but he's good. He's really good, and without him, I think Oregon obviously couldn't go any farther, but I think with him, they probably win, and we're still talking about them in the tournament. Let's talk about Gonzaga next. Obviously, they laid the wood to Florida State, who... I'm not going to sit there and say I was picking them as an underdog, but I thought this was a good Florida State team. They obviously couldn't hold a candle to Gonzaga, losing by over 10. I mean, they lost by, 14?
Yeah.
They absolutely got run in this tournament here. Is Gonzaga the real deal? Are they the team nobody's talking about that could win it all?
I think they're the team that's most sound with each other. It seems like, they all play well as a core group, where if one's off, the other one's picking up the slack. It doesn't seem like they rely so heavily on, one guy dominating in a game. And it's definitely very much of unsung hero or an unsung favorite as a number 1 seed.
I agree. For a 1 seed, I mean, usually these teams don't fly under the radar, but Gonzaga is 100% under the radar because there's not a ton of people talking about them. I mean, Everyone's talking Duke. Everyone's talking UNC. Everyone's talking about some of these other teams, like even teams like Purdue. But to me, they're under the radar. They're absolutely, if you look at it, they've been blowing teams out of the water in this tournament. They are a sleeper for me to go face Duke in the Final Four and get a chance to get that, national championship berth. I really do like Gonzaga.
Yeah, I do too. Sharif, I love your nicknames for everyone. We got Shay Shay. Will's trying to say Shady Shay. And we got Buck Rogers, Uncle Drew, and then Jake the Snake. Also, Jake the Hater.
You're just trying to make that a thing.
It should be.
Let's talk Texas Tech.
Let's do it.
Because I look at this game and I look at Michigan only dropping 44 points. I mean, Drew, we knew they were defensive, but come on. 44? And Texas Tech, to their credit, has done better than I thought they would do for a 3 seed. I had them losing to Buffalo. I think the show had them moving on, though, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
Absolutely. So you guys were more on Texas Tech than I was here.
Oh, no, they did not. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, we were both wrong then. We all missed Texas Tech moving on here, but I look at Michigan, and I look at the way they play defense. It's good to keep a team to 60 points, even in a tournament like this, even in college where it's not as long as the pros. But come on, man, 44 points. It's the same song and dance that's been the disappointment that Michigan's been for the past couple of years. They just can't score the basketball.
Yeah, but you got to remember, this team was in the national championship last year.
That was Michigan State again.
Sure? It's Michigan State? I think it's Michigan.
It was Michigan State. But that's okay.
Whatever, okay?
It was a Michigan, right?
It was a Michigan, too. That's all that matters.
Look, when I look at this game, man, and I look at them only score 44 points, I'm sitting there saying this team probably shouldn't have been a 2 seed. Realistically, I get it. They play good defense. They did well in the Big Ten, but you can't sit there and tell me that 44 points in a Sweet 16 game, there's choking, and then there's teams like Michigan State that have almost 44 points at halftime. So you look at this game, man, it's one of the biggest blowouts and one of the biggest upsets for me, even though Texas Tech isn't being talked about like one of the teams that can move on to win the tournament and everything. They should be, because this is a good win. Beating Buffalo was a good win. They had a great coach in Nate Oates. They've done a great job of showing up and winning even when nobody's had that expectation on them. And I think that's big in the NCAA tournament. Would you rather have a team without the spotlight?
It was Michigan.
Was it Michigan?
Yes. God, tell me I'm wrong.
You are wrong, but
I'm not wrong. So, anyways, I want to get back to my point of this whole thing. Michigan and Villanova were both in the championship last year. Now they're both out. This is why people love March Madness right here.
Well, I agree. You have a lot of turnover in basketball, too. Again, with the college rules where you only have to play 1 year in college before you can move on to the NCAA, it's hard for good teams to hang on to a lot of talent. But, again, 44 points in an entire... That's like 44 points. That's what you score in a half. And they got it in a game against Texas Tech. Is Texas Tech the real deal?
They might be.
Are they the team ever? Are they the Cinderella? I know it's hard to be a Cinderella at a 3 seed, but I mean, are they the team that nobody's talking about that everybody should be?
Yeah. Maybe they should be. Maybe they honestly should be.
I get you.
It seems like they can play any ball. They can play high scoring. They can play close defensive. I mean, close defensive games. I mean, why not? They just beat a team that should have beat them.
And Sharif kind of agrees with this. He says Texas Tech is absolutely a surprise. I think you're right, man. I don't think anyone had them going this into it. I think they were one of the popular teams to be upset in the early rounds, and they haven't been that. And quietly, they keep advancing. They keep moving on. Is this a team that eventually we could see playing Duke, maybe? And I hate to give it to Duke all the way, but they're pretty heavy favorites. Could they be a Final Four team to go against Duke?
It's a possibility. But you're talking about going against Gonzaga, one of the most complete teams playing for each other. Not, it's hard to sit there and say. I don't know. It's going to be a great game to watch.
I agree. Now let's talk LSU and Michigan State, who did not win, apparently, last year. But that's okay. They're still a good team. They're still a 2 seed. Still really good year in the Big Ten as well. And then you got a team like LSU that's playing without their head coach. Do you think they can pull through? If you look at the score right now, it's 48-41. We're in the second half, but it's just now begun. I like Michigan State to pull through in this one, even though I think LSU might have more talent on the roster. When you lose your leader and you lose your coach, especially in college when you've got some 18, 19, 20-year-old guys, I think it's huge. It's hard to overcome, and I think this is the reason why a lot of teams had LSU bouncing out. And this is the round I had them losing in, too.
Yeah. It's the round that our show had them bouncing out as well. They have Michigan State moving forward. But the way that first half was, if Michigan can take any of that momentum, it's going to be a rough day for LSU.
I agree with you. I think Michigan State is definitely set up to win this game. I think they probably should. I think it's better basketball to see a team like them advance, even though, like I said, I like the roster on LSU. Without their head coach, I don't see them beating a team like UNC. I don't see them beating a team like Gonzaga or Duke. They're not really a team that can compete. I think Michigan State can compete. I wouldn't call them a favorite, but I wouldn't necessarily sit there and say I wouldn't put money on them or I wouldn't take a chance that they could actually beat a number 1 seed. I think they're a very good team. They have everything going for them. They still have their head coach. I think Michigan State is the team that probably should win this game, and even if they do, I think this is the team that stays more dangerous deeper in the tournament. Moving forward, let's talk Auburn versus UNC because UNC is down by 2 at halftime. Bruce Pearl, like I've been saying, great coach, and a lot of college basketball comes down to who's the coach, what does the game plan look like. He's back, man. Obviously, Bruce Pearl had that terrible falling out with Tennessee a few years ago, and it seems like he's built a team like Auburn back up out of the ashes to compete with a team like North Carolina at this stage in the tournament. I think, to me, is one of the best stories so far that we've seen in this tournament.
I would be quite surprised if Auburn wins this game. Not that North Carolina is not beatable. They're totally beatable. But, I mean, you're talking about talent. You're talking about a great coach, Roy Williams. You're talking about a team that is literally just playing together as a core, beating some of the better teams like Duke.
They beat Duke twice without Zion. They were into the last second and when they had him back in the conference tournament. This is one of the most complete basketball teams in the nation. So to see a team like Auburn that's a 5 seed hanging with them, this will be a big upset in the tournament for me, but I think it's one that's well deserved and can help Auburn moving forward to have the coach like Bruce Pearl who's going to stick around. And then you've got big wins like this. If you can go into next year's recruiting and say, I beat UNC, you better believe Auburn is going to be back on the national stage as a basketball team that can compete and can upset some teams.
No doubt about it.
Now, later tonight, we have Virginia Tech versus Duke. The low-key pick to win this tournament is Virginia Tech. Do we see an upset here? I know you're a big Duke guy this year. You like Zion.
Well, I like Zion to be number 1 in the draft. I am not a Duke fan.
I didn't say like them, but you like them to make a deep run in the tournament.
I do see them winning the tournament, and man, the show's bracket didn't even have Virginia Tech beating St. Louis. So, to be honest with you, I just don't see it. I think Duke will win this game. I think it will be a little bit closer with Virginia Tech, the 4 seed, but I don't really see it. I think if Michigan State can pull it out, I think that's a possibility loss for Duke. Beyond that, I think Duke's going into the Elite 8.
Now, Shea says he picked Purdue to go all the way. Let me tell you this, Shea. If they shoot like they shot against Tennessee, they can beat anyone. That could be Duke against them. And if they shoot as lights out as they were shooting, this is going to be a very, very difficult basketball team to beat because, I've never seen three-point performances. I mean, I have, but I'm saying that three-point performance last night from them, absolutely fantastic, man. It was like watching guys like James Harden with some of those step-back jumpers they were ripping from 3 and draining. I mean, it was one of the best performances I've seen in the NCAA tournament so far. Offensively, at least, I was like, that is impressive. I like to see them get tougher on defense before I sit there and pick them to win everything. But they're still a good team. They're still a very good team that when they're hot can beat anyone. He also said there's still times if you want to be a Saints fan. You good? Because I think I'm good too. Would you have any respect for us if we kind of just jumped ship and joined the Saints bandwagon? Because I don't think that's the right move.
I was with the rest of America when they won their Super Bowl after Katrina happened.
Yeah.
I was a Saints fan for 4 hours, if that makes you happy, Shay.
Now, Sharif also has UNC running away with it in the second half. We'll see, but Auburn's had a great start. He also says they're a tough out. I agree, man. I think a lot of college basketball comes down to the coaching because players come and go. They move often, especially with the NBA being open to them right away. It ultimately comes down to, do you have a good coach and is he able to recruit well? Bruce Pearl has done 2 things really well. Recruiting and coaching. He's good at both of those things. So Auburn, I believe, is a tough out this year, and I think they're going to be a tough out going forward.
Yep.
He says he can have Barkley on recruiting trips. Well, maybe. He also says he'd take Virginia Tech and the points. It's interesting. I'm not sure where the line is at, but that is an interesting take for sure. I like Virginia Tech. I think they're a good team. I had them in one of the brackets I had filling out going on to the finals, but I don't know if I necessarily pick them right now. I think Duke's last scare.
The over-under is 143.5.
Yeah, I think Duke had that scare last time against UCF, and I think they're going to come out much more focused.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to probably beat Virginia Tech by a few points here. If they didn't have that scare, maybe I'd like this as an upset. But with them having a close game last time that came back to a putback shot, they are going to be all about business this year, and I think they're going to be able to handle VT.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you.
Let's talk about our last game here, Drew. Houston and Kentucky, a 3 versus a 2. Now, the arch rival Tennessee in one of their toughest matchups to this point is out of the tournament now. They get a team like Kentucky that's been under the radar a little bit and has some very, very good wins against teams that may not be the best on the schedule when you look at it, but they're a tough team to beat.
Yeah.
Does Kentucky drop out in this round?
I think it's, to be honest with you, about all the games that just haven't happened, haven't started yet, or have started, I think this is the most of an upset game, in my opinion. I think Houston can definitely beat Kentucky. And if I remember correctly, and I'm someone who probably knows the guy, that Kentucky is actually going to be down one player, one of their starters or key components, and I cannot remember his name right now. He has the flu. And the issue with that is the way Houston's playing and how hot they are and how quickly they can put up points. For Kentucky to lose any player, regardless of who it is, that's not a good thing.
It's an issue to be sure, but I think, again, it comes down to coaching. You look at Calipari for Kentucky. He's done this song and dance so many times. I mean, I really think if any team is going to be prepared for this kind of matchup, I think it is Kentucky. Or maybe Duke. You can sit there and say Coach K or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think you look at Houston. I think they're outmatched in this one. I really do think they're going to drop this one. I think I had this matchup predicted, but I really believe Kentucky is going to have what it takes, from whether it's the players on the court to the game plan to everything else. I think Kentucky's going to grab a couple-point win here, and we're going to see Kentucky move on to the next round. And I get it. There are a lot of people that don't like Kentucky. There are a lot of people that do. I still think the tournament is better when you have a team like that still in the finals. And I like Houston. Again, they could be as much of a Cinderella as a 3 seed can be.
As the show goes, they're going to the championship game.
I just don't see Houston making it. I think Houston probably bows out in this. In a Sweet 16 appearance for a team like Houston, still pretty impressive. So, any final thoughts for this matchup?
Well, you say that, but Houston's a 3rd seed. They're 33-3. I mean, you're saying you'd be surprised. This is a good team.
They're 33-3, but they don't play in the SEC. They don't play in the ACC. I mean, let's not pretend like Houston matches up and with the same caliber talent as some of these other guys have. I agree with you. They are a good team. I just don't think they're a good enough team to beat Kentucky. I really don't. I'm not sitting there hammering that.
You're a Kentucky fan.
Stone.
We get it.
Yeah.
We get it. You're a Wildcat
You caught me,
fan.
Drew.
We got it.
You caught me.
Last little comment. Sharif says Calipari is rumored to be the UCLA head coach.
I think he kind of downed that here recently. I think he said that he's in a good spot, and why would you leave when you already have things pretty much made for you? I think they're in a good spot in Kentucky, don't you? I don't know if I'd move on to a team that I'd have to build up out of the mud again if I'm Calipari. I think I'd just sit tight and keep letting the money roll in.
Sometimes when you have that kind of personality where you're like, I can turn that into a better organization, watch me. This is the type of guy that would want to do that.
Maybe so. All right, Drew, special thanks here.
Yeah, definitely, guys. Thank you so much for all the comments and love this evening, and I appreciate you all for joining us. Just real quick, special thanks to Ty, Jeremy, Will, Brian, Nate, Sharif, Chris, Tyler, Thomas, Nate, Seth, Devin, even though we don't like that guy, Jerry, Steven, JP, Jimmy, and Shay. You guys were all awesome. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Now, Sharif also says, I have to clear the air before we get out of here. He says, I'm hating again. But, Sharif, are you sure it's not just because I'm talking down about a team you like? Is that not necessarily the case? That's okay. Moving forward, you get to rub it in my face when Houston ultimately beats Kentucky here.
And Bo, man, thanks for the last comment there, buddy. He says Gonzaga's going to win it all.
Again, they're a sleeper pick. They've been dominating, and we haven't been talking about them. The pressure is off. They get to cruise as a 1 seed into the Final Four, perhaps. I don't know, man. I like Gonzaga, too. I think they're a great team, and again, I had them as one of those quiet teams that eventually can beat someone as quiet as a 1 seed can be. It's crazy, but nobody's talking about them. I like them, too. I think it's a good pick. If you're going to put money on the tournament right now, I don't think Gonzaga's a bad pick for it.
Yep.
All right, Drew. We're going to get out of here. We will be back on Monday. We'll talk, I'm sure, a lot more basketball. We'll be back talking NFL and everything else that happens. So for Sports Around the Bar, I am Jake, your bartender. This is the all-powerful Drew, and we will catch you guys next time.
See